Hello, hello, hello. It's me, Michelle, your host and Pocket DJ of Coffee Fueled Stories Season 5. This is so awesome. So, we have an amazing guest here. His name is AJ Brown, and I am looking so forward to talking with him. We're going to do a special live coffee tasting. He's going to do hot chocolate because it's late where he is. So, we have a lot of fun things to get into. So, without further ado, here is Mr. AJ Brown. Hello, welcome to the show.
Hey, Michelle, thank you for having me.
This is so cool. So we've been talking a little bit since like right around November timeframe, so the holidays and stuff.
Mhm.
And so things have been really crazy. Things have, doing all of the fun stuff. So it's been really cool following you and meeting you on social media, and then finally getting a chance to read your book, which is The Human Touch, which is what we're going to talk about. But you
Okay.
have a lot of books, so you'll have to tell us a little bit about those books. But for tonight's show, we're going to talk about it's Human Touch, which
Okay.
I can't say enough of. So why don't you tell the listeners what the book is about, and then we're going to deep dive into that, and we're going to do some awesome coffee and hot chocolate tasting.
Okay. Human Touch is a love story, which is very interesting because I tend to write horror and dark and psychological. But it's about Charlie Massengale, who an author who was kind of a mid-level author, and he was doing fairly well. And something happens, and he drops out of the scene. He just like, okay, I'm done. And for years, he nobody noticed him. And then one day, this young lady says, "Hey, I think I know you." And then it just kind of goes from there. It was such a fun story to write, but when he meets Danny Overton, his whole world changes. And if you've ever tried to hide away from the world, that type of change is terrifying. And I tried to put that in the book. So yeah.
Absolutely. And so, real quick, because we are going to do a little bit of a Lisa Love Fest gushiness,
Yeah.
she designed your cover. So, let the listeners know a little bit about you and Lisa, your relationship, and then the cover, please.
Okay, so Lisa Vasquez and I have been friends for a long, long time. We became really good friends in 2015 when she opened up Stitch Smile Publications, and I was looking for a publisher for a collection I had, and I was actually out of town at a book event, and it was like 2 a.m. in the morning, and I'm looking at my computer because I couldn't sleep, and I find this Stitch Smile Publications, and I'm like, "That's just Lisa Vasquez. I know this person." So I just shot the I just sent a message to the website, and the next day Lisa responded. I'm like, that is you. And I have been a big fan of her cover work. She does amazing covers. And so we got together and we discussed, and this was her first book. She had just opened Stitch Smile Publications like days earlier. And so we started discussing it, and she said, "Send me your collection," and it was a three story collection called A Stitch of Madness. She looked it over. She was like, "I love this," and so we started working together, like really working together. And as we worked together, we became so much closer, and we became really good friends. I mean, I'm her butt head, she's my Beavis, and when because I had more of a background in the designing of books and formatting and stuff like that, I helped format, and she created a cover. And next thing you know, we just had this working relationship where I do this and she do that on multiple things. And but Lisa's just absolutely amazing. Her mind and her determination and her quickness and she cares a lot about the actual writing world. She cares about the writers, and I became her mentor in the process of all this. And so I would get on her. She used the word gasp and spine so many times. I'm like, you got to stop that. You got to stop that. You know, gasp 6 times in a story is 5 times too many. And spine 4 times in a chapter is 3 times too many. And so we just developed this really really good relationship. And she's done a lot of covers to books that she didn't even publish for me, including Human Touch. And when we were discussing Human Touch's cover, I said I didn't want a flashy cover. I wanted something more of a drawing, more of something that's a little subdued, but I want a coffee shop in it because half the story takes place in a coffee shop, you know, and,
I can't wait
and
to talk about.
and so she came up with that idea, and I said I wanted the couple sitting at a table at a coffee shop, and so she came up with this concept, and I was like, that's actually perfect. That's exactly what I was looking for. So she tweaked it and tweaked it and tweaked it, and the cover that's on it now of that almost whimsical type sketch, that's all her, and that was her, and doing the title where the coffee shop name would be, that was her, and I thought it was brilliant when she did that.
That's awesome. I'm actually going to insert it. I'll stick it like somewhere in one of either on your side or like in between us, maybe right in
Okay,
there.
sounds good to me.
So I'll stick it in there so that people who when they're watching it, they can actually see. And then I wonder if I can put it in the show notes. I'm not sure if I can do like maybe a PDF or something in there. But
Right.
yes, I love, and what's really cool is it draws you in. It kind of when you it's like it makes you pause. You want to pause and look at it and try. Like I looked at all of the stickers on the door, and
Right.
like I was like,
Right.
what? I literally blew it way up, and I was like, what is all that stuff on there? And I was like, I loved it, and like I said, it just that's how I was like, ooh, I'm gonna stop and I'm gonna take my time with this. I'm gonna pause. And like I said, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was my first time reading your work. So the fact that I was reading a love story and a coffee shop, I was just like, oh, this is awesome. And I would love to read some of your other stuff because we do need to talk about monsters and things because that
Oh,
you
of
shared
course.
something on social media on Facebook, and it was about
Ah,
how you switched from monsters as in creatures to monsters as in psychological and the monsters that the humans are. So we're going to talk about that too.
okay.
But since we're still talking about the book, let's go with that. So I've got my notes here, and I just want to say I love all of the coffee, just so much coffee. So coffee and the coffee shop are like a character as well.
Mhm.
And that just made me so, so, so happy to just have someone who loves coffee as much as I do, gushing about coffee.
Oh yeah, I love coffee. I love coffee, and my wife is even more of a coffee drinker than I am, and we I'm like, we literally started doing this blog based on coffee because we would go to these coffee shops, and it wouldn't be like a Starbucks or something like that. It would have to be a mom and pop local place, and we would go to these places, and we would, well, what's the atmosphere like? What's the customer service like? What's the price? What's all this stuff? And so we're like, I want to write this. I want to make a blog. I want to do something to where we can put it out there, and if people want to go, and maybe it'll help these companies, do better. And it became like an obsession until COVID happened, and then we couldn't go anywhere.
Right.
But it was so much fun. And we just started it back about a month ago, and and it's funny because our favorite place is this place called the Roastery here in South Carolina, and turns out they read it, and I was like, yes, that's what we wanted. And so it was so cool that the people who owned the place read it, and
That's
they were like so thankful and appreciated it. And then I was in there a couple of weeks ago, and they're like, "You're the one who wrote that blog, didn't you?" I was like, "Yes." But yeah, it was cool. It was cool. We love coffee.
awesome. So um, we're going to talk about coffee. I'm going to ask you some personal questions about coffee, but let's keep going with the book for right now. But yes, I did love how much you had coffee in there and how Dee and the coffee shop itself were the coffee shop itself was like a character in addition to Dee. It wasn't just her, it was her and the coffee shop. And then, of course, coffee itself. Like I said,
Yes.
that just made me so happy. And I loved that you especially how the main character, Charlie, how he talks and why you actually make a point to say why he drinks his coffee the way that he does.
Hmm.
And so I'm actually doing the Charlie method. I'm going to call it the Charlie method because normally I do two creams and one sugar, but I am
Hmm.
doing two creams, no sugar, which is Charlie, the way that Charlie drinks it.
Yep.
So I have my, so this is part of the live tasting that we're going to do here. So let me unblur this. So bear with me here. You guys are going to see what my background looks like. And it's got all kinds of stuff in here. So please don't look at any of that. But what we're going to focus on is
Nice.
caffeine, and the whole thing is so freaking cool. Like, this is the coolest box ever of
That is
coffee.
awesome packaging.
It's amazing, and she won an award from the coffee. I forget exactly what it is, the Coffee Association. But yeah, so it's a coffin, and it
Nice.
pops open, and inside is this awesome. Here, let me take the little extra stuff out there. So there it is. So we're going to be trying Sleigh Ride tonight. So that
That
is
is awesome.
a
It's even got the felt background like a coffin would.
yeah, it's I love how she did all this. So here, I'm gonna take all this stuff out so everybody can see. So it looks just like a coffin.
That
And
is cool.
caffeine is sales of their coffee. And what's really cool is it even has bats, little like to show the roast level. So, and like I said, it's snickerdoodle. So I'm looking forward to, I haven't tried it. I brewed it, but I haven't tried it because I was waiting to try it with you. And so the sales, portion of the sales go to bat conservation. So
Nice.
not only are you drinking yummy, delicious coffee, but you're helping out little bats. And bats are very, very, very important to our environment. They help pollinate fruit trees and things of that nature. So there's that. Now I'm going to re-blur my screen. So bear with me here again. And there we go.
Oh, there it is.
All right. And then you are having a hot chocolate.
Yes, I have it right here. And it's actually in one of my favorite mugs, and I'm gonna turn it around so you can see. My niece made me this 10 years ago. And,
Oh,
now she is 24. And I still have this. I drink a lot out of it. And my other niece, who turns 10 at the end of this week, gave me one for Christmas that says, "This is my meeting mug. When it is empty, the meeting is over." And so
I love
that was that was at work. So,
okay, so oh, I'm not sure if we can see. There we go. So here we
oh,
are.
cool. I love the
So
skull.
thank you. This is one of my, I
That's your
had,
actual logo.
yeah, I designed this. I can't sell it because it's got NPR and I don't want them to get mad at me.
Right.
But I use it to kind of like the way that the show, I kind of think of how the show is like structured is we do have information, but we also have fun. So we
Yes.
talk about the writing process. We don't talk at a super academic level, but we do, deep dive into the characters. It's not just I like this book and this is my, this is my rating, this is my review. That's not the kind of show that this is.
Right.
It's a little bit more in depth. So that's why I like to call it the NPR of horror, even though I love that you wrote a love story. So here is the Sleigh Ride Snickerdoodle from Caffeine.
And that's with two creams and no sugar.
Two creams and no sugar. Oh my God. That is really freaking good.
So that was a 3 on the bat scale. So that's probably a medium roast.
Yes.
And so yeah, that's actually
Yeah.
perfect to have with the two creams and no sugar.
Yes, it is so good. Oh my God. Now I can't drink too much of it because it is, late at night for us, which is why you're doing the hot chocolate.
Yes.
But if you and I were doing this in the morning, you had mentioned a butterscotch coffee.
Yes.
God.
There's a place here in town that has a butterscotch coffee, and of course, it's you get the beans and you can grind it up right there and get it. OMG! Oh my! It is like the best cup of coffee, and it's kind of a lighter roast, so it's not like a medium or dark. It's a very light roast, but it's got such a nice, almost like you dropped a Butterworth into your cup of coffee, and it is so good. And we've only purchased like a pound bag of that once, but we made that last for a while because just like that's not something you just drink in the morning right before work. That's something you drink to like while you're writing or drink while you're sitting there having a cup of coffee with somebody or or having friends over.
Yeah.
That is like such a good cup of coffee.
Sounds amazing. It sounds,
And
and
it
that's,
needs no sugar. It's like it's got
I,
just enough of the sweet butterscotch that really just a little bit of cream and you're good.
yeah, I'm actually glad that I did the Charlie method, because it does have that nice cookie flavor. It has that snicker that this is absolute. I might get in trouble because I want to drink this whole cup. I don't want to waste it, and it's late, but I think I'm just gonna have to drink the whole damn thing because it's really freaking good. So I apologize and I don't apologize.
Well, I'm going to apologize for you being awake at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, or whenever it is you go to bed.
It'll be worth it. We're kicking off season five.
Yes,
Season five, staying awake all night,
that would be kind of fun.
right? What if I decide to do a live at like midnight on
Why
Instagram and be
not?
like,
Yeah, make sure it's a Friday or a Saturday though.
on
That
a
way, it's
Monday?
like so we can like sleep till 2 in the afternoon. And so,
Totally, totally. Okay, so now one of the things that I loved at the very end of the book, you do your author's notes. So I know I'm kind of jumping ahead here, but the reason I'm doing this is because I actually have a personal question. It is regarding coffee and it is regarding sex, but we're going to keep it clean because I love what you said about, let me see. Uh, bear with me. I've got on my notes. Oh, I loved how you said no sex and no sex organs or no sex acts. I love how you said, because I too feel like I'm very vanilla. And like you said, this is a love story. And it's a love story and a love of coffee.
mhm.
And so to have sex in there is like I really like how you described it without describing it.
Right. And see what the thing what you have to understand is you know there's a lot of romance, and I'm not bashing romance. Just stick me here. There's a lot of romance books that are essentially about 20% story and about 80% sex. And you can only describe certain parts of the body so many times, different ways, before you just get stupid about it. But for me, I did not want an act of sex to take away from the story. That because what it was two people by chance falling in love, and love in and of itself is not sex. There's love is not sex. You can have love without that.
Mhm.
And I've had a lot of relationships where there was no sex involved whatsoever. And I've had one where there was. And I've been with that one for 29 years. And so, but to me, love has to come before sex. If you have sex before love, you won't have love. You'll have love of the act, you'll have love of the body, you'll have love of the physical touch, but you won't have the emotional connection that I feel that I tried to develop in this story, and the part close to the end where there is a spark, it makes complete sense why it's there.
Uh, and like I said, and I also like how when you would say Charlie would get up and go to the bathroom without saying what he was actually doing. Like you could literally see him getting up, doing his business, and that's nature calls, doing his business. Like the way, and I was like, thank you. I was like, because I really don't need to know all of the details of that. Just like I wouldn't want anyone to know all of the details of what I'm doing while I'm in the bathroom. Like no one needs to know that. but people always say, right, well, writers need to describe things. And I'm like,
Mm-mm.
there's certain things that we don't need descriptions for because we all know what is happening in that thing.
Well,
That room, things happen.
there's an easy way to tell a story and to tell certain things without giving all of the details. And what I call it is heavy lifting. What I do is I give you, the reader, enough information for your imagination to do the heavy lifting. And if that's not enough, and if you need something that has that much detail, then you don't need to read my books. The only parts of my stories that I put so much detail in are the emotions and the scenery, because that you mentioned earlier about the coffee shop being a part of the story and actual character. I actually, when I teach writing, I talk about making your background, your scenery, part of the character, a character in the story, because that has to be alive. So you have to tell that in a way that, oh, I can see this, and this is beautiful, or this is horrible, or this is, you know, terrifying. But the acts, the physical acts the people do, I'm going to give you just enough for your brain to piece in the parts and do the heavy lifting.
I like that. I like that a lot. So I love how you were saying about when you teach writing. So you let your brain do the rest of the work. So I really I put that in quotes. So I'm actually going to use that. I'm going to say this is the valuable nugget from this show. Heavy lifting is we're going to talk like that is brilliant. I love that. So that is a very useful nugget. So thank you for that.
No, you're
Um,
welcome. I mean,
but this
go ahead, go ahead, go
oh
ahead.
sorry. So this is where it might seem a little bit contradictory because I know we weren't talking, so we were talking about sex, but we were talking about not talking about sex. But where I'm going with this is I read and I heard, and I actually did a blog about it because someone told me about this, and I don't know if this is true, so I'm going to ask you. Supposedly, they say how you take your coffee is how you like your sex. And what that means is so if you take it
Hmm.
black, you know, no frills, basic. So we're gonna use the word heavy lifting for this remaining part of the conversation.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
And then so those who like cream and sugar, don't want it exactly the way that you have for, say, black. So I don't know if you agree with that or not.
I
It's
think I think let me see if I can. Okay, so one of my favorite flavors is white chocolate raspberry.
ooh, yummy.
I love white chocolate raspberry, but white chocolate raspberry is not everybody's cup of tea, so to
Mhm,
speak, or cup of
mhm,
coffee.
mhm.
Um, I love salted caramel.
Yum.
Love butterscotch.
Yes.
I'm not a fan of hazelnut.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of the coconut or the peppermints in my coffee and stuff like that. Um, I think, okay, vanilla is kind of what we're looking at as far as if you like it black, you like it vanilla. You know, I think that makes sense. If you like a little bit of cream and sugar, you like it spiced up a little. I like white chocolate raspberry, so I like it spiced up. I think that, but I also think it's very important that you and your partner are in agreement with
Yes.
what's going on. And I think
Yes.
that's if and I'm going to try to keep this as innocent sounding as possible. If your partner is into kinks and stuff like that, but you are not, you have to make sure and set that boundary.
Yes.
You know, and if you are into, let's just say, BDSM, but your partner is not, it's important that your partner sets that boundary. I I tell people, like, especially when they first get married or they're dating, do not do anything at the beginning of a relationship that you not want to do for the rest of your life.
Yes.
Um,
Very true. And
so
see,
yes,
this is where knowing how they take their coffee is important.
yeah, I would agree. I would agree. And my wife and I have very similar taste in coffees, very similar taste in um, cream and sugar and what we like without cream and sugar and what we like with um, flavored creamers or flavored syrups. Um, so we're very compatible in our coffee. If you know what I mean.
Yes. So what we're going to use that.
Yes.
But what's kind of funny is knowing, like having this in the back of my head and sitting at a coffee shop and hearing people's orders. And especially like
Right.
these really big buff guys. Like I'll use this example. So I met my wife, my partner, she owned a coffee shop. I was a business traveler and I walked into her coffee shop and then, exactly what you said, like you just know. Like it was literally love at first sight, which was just crazy because I was a widow and I was not ready for a relationship. And so I kind of could relate to Charlie in a way. To a certain extent, obviously my situation was not quite as, bad as his, but I could relate to some of the things that Charlie was going through. And as far as like damaged goods, like you feel like you're
Yeah.
never going to be good enough for someone ever again because of what you have been through. And
Mhm.
so, getting back to the coffee part, I would sit at the coffee shop while she was working and I would watch people order. And this big, huge, beefy, buff guy came in and he ordered like the largest, sweetest drink. And I was like, I know how he likes it. And it just cracked me up. Whether it's true or not, I don't know, but it's fun for a conversation over a cup of coffee, nonetheless.
And it's interesting because you do learn a lot about people from what they order, how they talk, um, how they treat people as far as wait staff, how they treat people who are trying to give them customer service. So you learn a lot. So there's probably some truth to how you like your coffee is how you like your bedroom. Um, but just like other things that shoe size indicates, um,
Right.
right? But
This is going really
I think it's all just depends on, you know, really. There's probably facts in everything and probably non-facts in all of that.
right.
Um, but knowing that the type of stuff that my wife and I drink, there's probably some fact to that. And so, yeah, that's all I'm gonna say.
And we're just gonna leave it at that too, because I already feel like my face is pink enough that I can't get any pinker. So, we're gonna talk about some of the scenes that actually brought me to tears. I actually I had a couple times where you got me teary-eyed, and that was at the barber shop. And I don't like to
Oh,
give spoilers, so I try to do a spoiler-free show. But if I need to cut things out so that we don't spoil it, I will. But all I'm gonna say about that was you take us like you really just feel for Charlie. You
yes.
really, and I love that it's character driven. It's a character driven story, and you put Charlie through some heavy ass crap, and and you're just like, and you're cheering for him too. Like I found myself literally like talking out loud, like I'm literally cheering for Charlie. I have it in my notes, cheering for Charlie, happy face, and because you're like, come on, Charlie, come on, please. And you're like, get out of this funk, do this,
Mhm.
do these things. And then when he goes to the barber shop, and like I said, I don't want to say what happens, but when you take me to the barber shop, I was like, oh, is somebody cutting onions right now? Like this is such a beautiful scene.
That was so pivotal to the story. That was the moment where Charlie was like, "I'm doing this. I have to be honest. I have to tell the truth. Because up until that point, the last 8 or 9 years of his life had been a lie. You know, and so that scene, and I debated that scene for a while because I wasn't even sure I was going to have it go the way it was going. And but then I was like, it can't be a love story if there's no actual love. You know, it can't be a love story if there's no actual trust. It can't be a love story if there's no actual risk involved. You know, because love is risky. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
part of the reason we mourn when love is lost or love ends is because we love deeply. You know, and so love is a risk, and this was his risk.
Yeah.
This was his risk, and he there it could have backfired on him because at that point she would know some things that we're not going to talk about because we don't want to spoil it, but she would know some things and he would have to own up to some things, and that's terrifying.
Yeah.
And so this was a risk that he was willing to take in order to to look, if I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this right. I'm all in,
Yes.
and I want to show you who I really am.
Yeah.
And to me, it was pivotal, probably the most pivotal point in the entire book.
Yeah, the vulnerability. Like I said, like
Yes,
when because I was like, where are we going? Like, what is happening here? Where literally I'm like, where's AJ taking me right now? What's happening? And then I was like, oh, oh no. Oh, and I just like literally I was like, my God, this is so powerful. And so what I thought was really cool about this story is how you are able, so I'm going to use like a pendulum as my analogy. You are able to, so we're kind of like swishing through the story, and then every now and then you give us this really big swing of vulnerability of him and what he's going through. Like I said, that cheering, you're cheering for him, and then you're like, okay, okay, okay. And then you gut punched me, and I can't say what the gut punch is, but you gut punched me. And I was like, I literally said out loud, I was like, no,
I
like,
know what scene you're talking about.
no. So you literally take us through all of these different aspects with Charlie. And for that, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. It was
Like,
awesome.
wow. Thank you. And thank you for not like I don't again I don't want to spoil it. So I put it on my notes here. Um I don't want to say I might have to cut this out. So this is
Okay.
for you. This is just for you, AJ. So every time they were walking after a certain thing happened, and I had these guys in my head,
Hmm.
and then they kept walking, and then I forgot about the ass. I literally forgot about the ass hats, and then you punched me in the gut. I was like, damn it! That is some freaking good writing. Because I
Well,
was like,
thank you.
foreshadowing, no, no, bam, damn, he's good.
Thank you.
He
I
is good.
appreciate that. That was awesome. I have a rule. Okay, and you haven't read this, but I'd be more than happy to send you these books if you'd like them. I wrote this book called Dredging Up Memories, and it is a zombie story, but it is not a zombie story. It is solely based on the main character Hank Walker, and there is a scene in there where I can't tell you what I don't want to tell you what it is because I'll
Mhm.
send it to you if you'd like me to.
Sure, sure.
Um, but there is a scene in there that just changes the entire book and the entire direction of where the book goes. And it was one of those, oh my God, did that just happen? And when I wrote that scene, when I wrote that chapter that was in, I stopped writing that book for about a month because it really shook me up
Wow.
because of the impact of the emotional impact. And so and I'm gonna tie that back to Charlie Massengale. There's you get Charlie's backstory early in the story. You get why he is where he's at. You get what happened to him, and you get why he's um, such a loner at this point, why he doesn't want to be known. He wants to completely disappear. You get all of this. So when you start, my goal is always to have you fall in love with the two main characters of any book that I ever write. You know, and in this case, it was Charlie and Danny. And Danny is sweet. She's innocent. She's not quite carefree. She's got a lot of baggage herself. But Charlie, being a little older, being reluctant, you know, and having gone through some things, I still had to put him through something else. You know, I still had to do something to bond them, you
Yes.
know, because really up until that point, yeah, it was kind of puppy love. It was kind of like, I think I'm in love with this girl. I think I'm in love with this guy. I don't know where this is going to go. But when that scene happens and you get, and there's one part in there where it's just Danny, you know, right after that's just Danny. That's the only chapter in the entire book that's just her, you know, and you see this real love, this real, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And then you get to see them come through it. And then to go back to the scene where we talked about earlier, where they didn't we didn't describe sex, but there was this moment where it's like, if there was ever a time that someone loved each other or needed to be loved by somebody, it's this moment.
Yes.
And so I have a habit of doing that in a lot of my stories, of just like, okay, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad. Oh, this is good. Oh, we're going to kill him, you know, and we're gonna hurt him. We're gonna do this to him, and then we'll just pick him back up. And I do that a lot, you know, and so so I know exactly what scene you're talking about, and I will tell you this, and I'm going to reference milk. I'm going to
Uh,
reference milk.
yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so
Yes.
the milk, that part is so indicative of the story. Is the milk spilling was so indicative of everything that happened, and that scene also, I had to stop writing for a little while because I honestly wasn't sure if I was going to take it in the direction it was going to go or take it in a different direction. And I knew what direction I wanted to go in, but I had to really stew over it for a little bit to make sure I wrote it the right way. And if I would have hurried through to get to the next part, it wouldn't have came out the way it came out. And I'm really glad I waited to write the next part.
And thank you for saying that because um you kind of so Charlie, his character, does the same thing. He writes to a certain point and then he just kind of stops
Mm-hmm.
for different reasons. But I think exactly what you were just saying. Sometimes you go through so much emotion writing that sometimes you do have to take a pause.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so for me, that's kind of like my blogs. So my book was a collection of blogs, and it was cathartic because of what I had gone through. And so I was using writing as a tool to help me process what was happening. But sometimes it would be so raw and so painful that I would have to stop. I'm like, you know what? I'm feeling a lot of things right now. I'm not gonna write today. Like, I'm just gonna keep
Mm-hmm.
processing and I'll come back to it when I'm feeling it. And so feeling and knowing when to stop, I think is also very important. And that's kind of something, I don't know if that's something that's talked about in writing classes, workshops, things of that nature. Could you address that?
Well, I think what happens is, okay, it's good to write with emotion. Okay, it's very good to write with emotion, but it's not good to write when you're overwhelmed.
There you
You know,
go.
and I think the issue, and I think what you're saying also with your book and your blogs, and you had to step back because you were having to process a lot of things going on at one time, is that at that point you were probably overwhelmed. You know,
Yes.
and there are certain scenes and certain stories that I've written that once I've written parts, if I have tears in my eyes, I have to walk away. Because for me, I don't. If if Danny is based off my wife, okay.
Okay.
Danny is based off my wife, and every female character that I write has some touch of my wife in her, because that way I can bring out how I feel about her, and be able to write about it. Um, so if I write a scene and I have tears in my eyes when I'm done, I have to collect myself. I have to collect myself because I just traumatized myself by writing that scene. And I have to collect myself. And after writing the scene I was telling you about and dredging up memories, I had to go hug my wife.
Oh,
You know, I mean, because it was I was like, did I just write that scene? Did I just write that part? And so I think it's great to write. One of the things that I've always prided myself on since I really started taking writing seriously was that I can draw emotion from people, that I can make you feel something, that I can make you hurt, I can make you laugh, I can make you cry. And that's one of the biggest things that I try to do in every single one of my stories. But you have to like understand, once you get to a point, you're either at a very, very high or a very, very low. And if you want to dig yourself out of low or bring yourself out of the high, you have to walk away, because you have to process how to either pull yourself out of the hole or how to bring yourself back down to earth. And that is not talked about. Matter of fact, I don't think I've touched on that once when teaching, and that was probably 7 or 8 years ago. And I've never touched on that again. You really do have to, because when you write an emotional scene, especially an emotionally distraught scene, in order for your character to get to a better place, you have to get yourself to a better place. And so then what you do is, okay, how did I get myself from here to here? Okay, and how do I get myself from here to here? Well, you take that. You take, okay, this is where my character was. This is where I was. So now I need to kind of take these steps to get into this place. Okay, now I've gotten this place. Now I need to get to this place. So it really is it really is, there are really steps to it, to being able to pull yourself out of the muck or bring yourself back down to earth. And I love that process. That's like one of my favorite processes of the entire writing experience.
that's awesome. Thank you for that because like I said, it never even dawned on me either, for the most part, like the stories that I read, they're very character driven. And you guys, you authors, you take the characters to the, all the way to the extremes. And you're just like, oh my God. And then so it's important. I'm going to use the term pump the brakes. So it makes sense that you're kind of like, okay, we have just pushed this character all the way to the far edge here. I'm gonna take a deep breath too. Like
Mm-hmm.
I need to walk away. So so that is also a very valuable nugget. And I'm attempting a horror. I'm just gonna call it novella, maybe even short story. I don't know. It's just an idea, and literally I've never done anything other than writing blogs. So the voice that I've used has always been my own personal experience. I've never actually written fiction. This is my first attempt at fiction. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm giving it a go. So I know I need to put him through something. I put them through something, and I'm trying. I'm experimenting with it. But now I know. Okay, I'm going to put them through something, and then I'm going to pump the brakes. So
Yep.
thank you.
Yep. Well, and here's the thing, and I'll say this, and you can ask Lisa when I say this, I absolutely mean it. You have my email, you have my information. If you want me to help you, just reach out. I'll be more than happy to. This is like the part when it comes to, I when I first started writing, I first of all I sucked. Okay. And I was horrible in school. I hated writing. I didn't write at all. But when I decided to start writing, I had nobody to teach me. And so I joined this writing group, and I really was a nobody. And there were hundreds of people in this group, and it was online. It was before social media blew up, and I started looking at what people were good at, and then I would say, "Hey, how do you do this? What? How do you?" And then I literally spent 2 years working on dialogue, working on emotions, working on sceneries, working on um, descriptions, both in your characters, working on character development and the scenery. I literally spent 2 years and I would just write stories of nothing but scenery, nothing but dialogue, nothing but character description. And I had nobody to really help me, you know? And so when I got to where I knew all the rules, I said, screw it, I'm breaking every rule I can to write to become a better writer because I don't understand some of the rules. They make no sense. They were created 100 years ago, and that makes no sense to me. Why are we still doing it? I don't understand. So I started breaking all the rules, and I started actually becoming a better writer. And so then I'm like, anytime someone asks me, I'm like, I got time for you. I'm gonna make time for you. I'm gonna do what I can because nobody helped me. Well, and that's not correct. After a while, people did start helping me, but at first, it was me, and it was studying. It was trying to pick brains of people. Sometimes I get some answers, and sometimes I wouldn't. But so, if you want help, especially since it's fiction and it's horror, and you're going to put your characters through the ringer, that's up my alley. That is like literally right up my alley. And if you want help, just reach out. I'd be more than happy to
Thank you.
help.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Um,
Okay.
besides just talking about coffee and writing, because that's very important. Those are the two big things for the show. However, I need to know, you spent a good amount of time talking about PB&J sandwiches. So I need to know, how do you eat your PB&J sandwich, Mr. AJ Brown?
The way Danny made it.
Okay.
My grandmother made it that way for me when I was a kid. And so when I decided to give them something to eat, I had to give Danny something to draw him in and something that was like, look, this is the best peanut butter and jelly sandwich you've ever had. Tell me I'm wrong, you know? And so what I did was I basically took what my grandmother did for me and I put it in the book. That is literally how my grandmother made it. And so that's why when Charlie tries it, it's the best thing he's ever eaten because it was the best thing I had ever eaten when I was a kid. And I still do my peanut butter and jelly sandwiches to this day that way.
That's awesome. Okay, so you're gonna appreciate this. So you read the SOP. We talked about it before we started recording. So I was a technical writer by trade, which is again why writing fiction is very difficult for me because I only know how to do factual things, right? And SOP is basic. It's a standard. It's a process.
Right.
Everybody does the same thing the same way. This is how we all do it. So when I would interview applicants for a technical writing position, I would give them the peanut butter and jelly test. And what that was a pen and a piece of paper, and I would say, make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So they would have to they would have to describe how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And so depending on how they did it, I would know if they were more of an English major, meaning it was very fluffy, very creative. They didn't put the ingredients at the top. They didn't give you a list of tools. They just went at it. Or if they were technical writer inclined, they gave you all of the tools. They told
Yep.
you, the quantity of each amount, 2 tablespoons of peanut butter.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that you had the PB&J in there, I had to laugh because number one, who doesn't love a PB&J sandwich?
Mm-hmm.
And number two, I thought it was funny that we used the PB&J test to test our writers.
That is awesome. That is awesome. And if a good PB&J sandwich is the best thing in the world, it really is.
It is. Like, I remember being so broke. So I was in undergrad and broke, like no joke. And I still had 2 more years to go. I was getting ready to go to grad school. And I needed a trip. I had been in school for 8 years straight, no break, broke, and I was like, I need to get away. I need to prepare for grad school because I don't know what's ahead of me. And so my late wife and I, we went to Ireland for 2 weeks. We rented a car, we drove on the other side of the road, and I was like, if I can handle driving on the other side of the road for 2 weeks, I can handle grad school. Like that prepared me for, that was like my preparation for grad school, right? But we were so broke that that's what we did. We went to the little grocery store, we bought a jar of peanut butter, we bought a loaf of bread, and we would sit at the ruins and just make peanut butter sandwiches and just sit at these, medieval ruins. Just,
And it's filling.
it was,
Peanut butter is filling.
it was cheap and filling.
Mhm.
It was
That's
perfect.
awesome.
It was
That is
perfect.
awesome. There is nothing like, and even, what I used to do when I was a kid? I don't do it now because it's really, really bad for you. But when I was a kid, um, and I didn't have jelly, I would still toast the bread, put peanut butter on it, then sprinkle sugar on it, and then eat it. Boy, let me tell you, it was good, but it would give you a buzz because you just be so jacked on sugar, even though it's not no a ton of sugar, or at least I didn't think it was, but it probably was more than what I should have had it when I was a kid. But oh man, a good peanut butter and jelly sandwich, I would take it all day long.
Totally, totally. It's funny that you said that. So I would get sandwiches. My father would make sandwiches for me when I was, in elementary school. And if we ran out of jelly, he would use honey. So
Oh
I
yeah.
could always tell when he ran out because I would pull it from the baggie, and the baggie it was just soaked with the honey, and I was like, oh, I guess we ran out of jelly today, and it was just this gooey peanut buttery honey mess. So
In school, the cafeteria ladies would make peanut butter and jelly sandwich with peanut butter and honey, and they mix it with confectioner sugar, and that's how they put it on the bread is with mixture of honey, confectioner sugar, and peanut butter, and then the bread. Yeah, talk about a bunch of kids who were high. You know,
totally. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay, burgers. So I love how you mentioned the burger scene and the way that Charlie tells her, like, you can put whatever you want on it, like egg. And the cutest part was you were maple and vinegar, maple syrup and vinegar. I like laughed out loud so hard. I was like, that is absolutely disgusting. And then the cutest part was you referenced it again later, and it was kind of like this cute little bond between them. And I just thought that was like the sweetest, cutest, most disgusting thing at the same time.
it absolutely is. And by the way, I hate vinegar. So, but no. One of the things, and look at your current relationship and your former relationship. Just look at them. Just take a when you have a moment. Just look at them and look at the things that you connect over that were small. And those are the biggest things that are part of your relationship. It's those tiny things that you connected with early, and those are the biggest things now, because those are what you fell in love with when y'all first got together, you know. And the peanut butter and jelly, the coffee, the hamburger, especially at Vic's, because Vic's is a greasy spoon if there ever was a greasy spoon.
Yeah,
um you know, those are all little things that they connect over, you know. And those are all things that years later on down the road, that they're still going to have the peanut butter and jelly. He's, hey babe, can you make me a peanut butter and jelly sandwich tonight? Or hey, you want to go with a Vicks or whatever, and so to me, those are all those little things, and there's several of them throughout the book. Um, those are exactly as you're saying. Those are the little things that they connected over, they bonded over, and that's where love is found, is in those little things. It's not the big things. It's not, oh, he bought me a big diamond ring. Oh, he did this, that, and the other. It's none of that. It's all those tiny things. My wife asked me out the first 4 times. And after the fourth time, I said, do you like me or something? Because and because like for real, I had the previous two girls had cheated on me, and so I was like,
Oh,
seriously, do you like me or something? Because I'm not good with hints. And then we actually went. We kind of hung out the first 3 or 4 times. And then we actually went on a date. And after that date, I told my friend, I said, I'm marrying this girl. I said, I'm marrying her. She didn't
oh,
know. She didn't find out till a year later that I was going to propose. But I literally went and bought her diamond ring that weekend. I'm like, I'm marrying this girl.
oh,
But it was little things. It was little things that she had done in the process of those 3 or 4 times hanging out, and then that date that I was, and even to this day, when she does one of those little things, I'm like, yeah, that's why I fell in love with her,
oh.
you know,
I
and
love
and
that. I
so
love
yeah,
that. And I love that you say that because it's very true. Um, and especially because burgers. So usually they say you're not supposed to eat burgers on a first date. So when we went for a first date, I was starving. So I was like super working out and I was an hour and a half past my dinner time. So it was 9:30. Now normally I ate at 8. Because I woke up at 4 and I worked out and I was crazy and I did all of these things. We both woke up at 4. We both had crazy schedules, but we made it work. And so she was like, "Hey, would you like to come out to dinner?" And that was at 8 o'clock. So, and that was an hour and a half away from her. So I drove it. She was like, "I will buy if you drive, and I was like, "Sure, okay." So by the time I got to San Diego, I was already like more than starving. She was like,
yeah,
"Where do you want to go?" And I was like, "I don't care. I just don't want to get hangry. I just would like some food. Pick a restaurant and I will find something to eat." And so she was like, "Okay." So she found a place and I was like, "Burger." I was like, "I don't care that this is a first date." I'm like, "I need to eat because I'm already an hour and a half past eating time. And I don't want to have this be a very bad situation because I'm hangry." So I'm like, I want to be on my best behavior, not my worst behavior.
right.
So the fact that you had burgers in there cracked me up because again, now she loves burgers. She was never a burger person, but now she loves burgers. She craves burgers. So there
I
you
love
go.
burgers.
Burgers bring people together.
Oh, and I'm gonna give you a little hint. One day, get you some blueberry jam and some provolone cheese and put it on a burger.
Okay.
Just
I
trust
will
me.
I will try. I actually have had a peanut butter on a burger. They were little burger sliders and I
Yeah,
tried that was like the thing in LA, so I tried it. Okay, so one of the things that we wanted to touch on was the monsters you had posted on Facebook years ago when you first started writing. You wrote horror, the monsters that terrify and kill, dark things that go bump in the night, vampire spiders, shadow people, creatures from, and I'm using, I'm not, so creatures from your imagination that weren't so imaginative. Then, as time passed, your monsters became less monstrous and more human. Ghosts were prevalent in many stories, zombies, still some vampires, demons, both within and out. So then you go on to say that your monsters changed. So here I sit at my desk thinking about this story and how much writing has changed from 24 to 54. So would you like to talk a little bit about that?
I would. Um, I wrote that, and I actually didn't type it up in on social media. I actually wrote it in a document, and I actually titled that "The Maturing Writer." After I realized what I had written, um, you know, it's kind of like you're a kid, you don't know a whole lot, so your imagination is this way, and it's very immature, and a lot of my stuff when I first started writing was very immature, very amateurish, a lot of blood, guts, just stuff that I feel like is weak storytelling, and a lot of monsters. I mean, I think the first, oh man, probably 40 or 50 stories I wrote were nothing but monsters. There was no real character development, no real. It was just let's kill every single character I can. You know, but then I started realizing that's not what I enjoyed reading. So why am I writing stuff like that? And that's when I started trying to learn how to write. That's when I joined the writing community and started teaching myself how to write. And when I started doing that, I started realizing that characters, they're people, and they're not characters. They're people. And if you're going to create people in a story, they have to have lives. They have to have things that mean something to them. They have to have faults. They have to have strong points. But then Ghost kind of took over, and I fell in love with Ghost, and I still love Ghost to this day. I still write a lot about Ghost because, to me, Ghost are essentially, their souls left behind. They did their work wasn't finished. There's something not they can't move on. And but even then, I started realizing that, well, ghosts are still people. They're still people, and you have to create something that's going to connect with your people. So that's when I started looking at real monsters, abusive men, drug addicts, pedophiles, abusive parents. I started really looking at psychological, mental, heart wrenching stuff because I believe the worst monsters are us
Yes.
people.
Yes.
We are the worst monsters there are. There is nothing in your imagination that can be worse than a human being
Yes.
who has no empathy for life.
Yes.
You know, and so as I progressed, I started realizing that I no longer enjoyed writing about monsters killing people and you know things like that. Even I mentioned dredging up memories earlier, and this is a story about zombies, but it's the zombies are they're kind of background fodder. You know, it's a story about the character. It's a story about the people in the book, and and I wrote that back in 2010 when I first started writing Dredging Up Memories. And even then to now, I realized that that was good. And I still feel like that's a very good book. And it's one of my favorite books that I've written. But now I'm writing stuff and it's like really diving into um, how we treat people and how people are manipulative and how people will lie to get things their way. And those are when you meet somebody who's a narcissistic individual, they're terrifying. They because they only think about themselves. And I started studying psychology. Like my daughter, she went to college for psychology, and so when she was done with the class, well, she bought the books. So I'm like, don't give the books back. I want them. And so I got her psychology books, and I started really looking into it and started reading. And I had been kind of reading about psychology for a couple of years, but then when I got a hold of books, I'm like, oh. And so then I really started playing with it. And I understood that as a writer, if you're not evolving, you're standing still and you're not getting better. And so you mentioned earlier that you're a technical writer and you're used to writing things with your blog that's based in fact. So now you're about to take a step into the fiction world. So what you've done is you've gone from being a technical writer and a blogger to taking a step into the fictional world, which means at this point, let's just say, I'm just going to say 10 years ago, and I don't know how long you've been doing this. I'm just going to say 10 years ago, you were writing, just say, the technical books and the technical stuff. And then you started blogging, let's just say 4 years ago. And now you're maturing into a fictional writer. You're taking all the stuff you learned from technical, you're taking all the stuff you learned from blogging, and now you're going to attempt a fictional story. This is a maturing arc, you know. And to me, when I went from writing, the very first story I wrote was about a guy who died 17 years earlier and came back to kill the guy who he blamed for killing him. Um, and it was completely cheesy, very much a Freddy Krueger-ish type story. And that was Monsters. And for like my first 4 or 5 years, that's all I wrote. And then as it evolved and I became what I am today, I love what I write today because there's so much more connection. There's so much more life to the stories. And there's so much more, in my opinion, truth to the stories. And we talk about human touch throughout, but there's truth in that story about love and how you find it and what real love is. And, and it's these little connecting parts that, that they connected and bonded over. And then there's the big part that they bonded over, you know, that's all of that kind of when it started back then, I would have never guessed I would have written a love story ever, you know. Um, and that's maturing. Sometimes I wonder if that's good. But for the most part, I think it's if you're not maturing as a writer, if you're not getting better, if you're not branching out. And look, my editor told me, you know what, write a love story. Write a love story. You're in a funk, write a love story. Step outside of your boundaries, step outside of what your comfort zone is, and write a love story. And I'm like, you've got to be out of your mind, woman. And by the way, my editor, and this is something Lisa told me, and I got to tell you this because this is the honest to God truth. My Lisa and I were talking before you and I connected for this interview, and she goes, "You're gonna love Michelle. She's like Larissa." And Larissa is again, I mentioned this earlier, Larissa is like one of my closest friends. We share a birthday. She is the female version of me. Um, and Lisa was not kidding. You're definitely a lot like Larissa, and I think that's amazing. But back to all this is a maturity thing. You start seeing these things now, Oh, by the way, and also D in the book,
Uh-huh.
that's Larissa.
Oh, I was gonna ask you. I meant to ask who is D. So
Larissa.
okay, okay, very cool.
Larissa is D is completely Larissa. It was her idea to write the love story, and so I'm like, I got to figure out a way to put her in here. And D is Larissa. If you've never seen me and Larissa together, um, but Larissa and her wife Tara and my wife and we're like, if we could all live in the same house, we would live in the same house forever. I mean, we're just that tight. Um,
My
but
cheeks hurt. I'm so happy. Like my
uh,
cheeks hurt from smiling. Like I'm loving this story.
it's so good. But see, and here's the thing though. When I was 24, I was very angry individual. So a lot of that showed through in my writing. And when I met my wife at 25, and then we got married when I was 27, um, my world started changing. How I started writing started changing because I had these more emotional connections. We had a child, when I was 31, my daughter was born. And and then my son was born 4 years later, and they gave me these magnificent ideas. Matter of fact, my favorite book, Corey's Way, is based off of my daughter, you know. But all of that's maturing. So the content I wrote before my wife and I got together, then a couple of years after, the content I wrote as usual, especially after I became a father, and they grew up and they started growing up. And if you're not, and that's those 30 years, and it's hard to believe it's been 30 years, 31 actually, but so hard to believe I've been writing that long. But I'm so happy to see, and I have every story I've ever written, and I have them in folders from 1993 to 2024. And I just wrote my first story today at lunch at work. And I can see the difference from 93 to 96, from 96 to 2000, 2000 to 2006, and to now. And that's what you want. That's what you want. You want to always be maturing and moving forward. It doesn't matter if your stuff changes. Is it still a good story? You know, if it is, then you're doing it right. You're doing it right.
I like that. And as you were talking, I was trying to think about like my very first blog to where so my first blog to my most recent blog. And I was like, wow, I never thought about it. But yeah, it has changed. It has matured. And it's funny because that very first one, when you were talking, I was like, wow, actually, now that I think about it, the writing is very immature. It's very different than what I write today. And today it's more emotional on a different level.
Yeah.
Where before it was just descriptive. It was just, I was telling you something. But it was, I don't want to call it drivel because I don't like to, you know what? Let's just call it drivel. I'm going to call it drivel. I'm going to admit that, but I like it. I'm still attached to it because it's what I literally crossed the threshold from blogger to writer with
Mhm.
that first piece.
And I will say this, it's not drivel. And we can call it dribble, but here's the thing. I mentioned earlier about steps.
Mhm.
That was a step.
Yes.
That
Yes, you're
step.
absolutely right.
And that step led you to another step and another step and another step. Now you may feel like, oh, that's horrible, but that's your starting point. And that is always going to be the point where you can go, this is how I used to write. This is how I write now. And you
Yes.
can see the growth. And that's where, so often that we in life and writing and whatever endeavors, when we mess up or when we write something we don't feel is terribly great or whatever, we start getting down on ourselves. Like, I'm a hack. I'm a what's the term? An imposter.
Right.
I'm all this. But what we have to understand is how many people wish they could have wrote that first piece.
That's why I caught myself. I was like, well, and writing is a practice. You can't get
Mhm.
good at it if you don't do it,
Yep.
right? How can you be a good tennis player if you don't actually get out on the court and play and practice?
Yep.
It's the only sport that I've actually been involved in. Like I am the most unathletic person on the planet. Like I never did sports. I hated it. I don't know why. Probably because I wanted to do other things like fencing, and my mom was like, no.
Oh yeah.
And tap dancing, and she was like, no, you're gonna do ballet. And I was like, do not put me in a tutu. I was like, it's not happening. So we butted heads a lot. And so because we butted heads, things didn't get things we did I did nothing. But tennis was the one thing we did agree on. So she actually had got me tennis lessons. So I do know about like practicing in the house with the ball bouncing, on the center of the
Mhm.
racket and pressing against the wall to build up your muscles. So these are the things. So if I didn't do those exercises, I wouldn't be able to do what my coach wanted me to do out on the
Mhm.
court. So again, practice. The point of that was practice. You have to do these things in order to get better.
Yeah.
And writing is a process. You have to practice. You have to learn if you want to get better as well.
Yep. And it's riding is like riding a bike. It really is. And just like you play tennis, okay, you practice at tennis, you could probably still play tennis today. And maybe not as well as you could have 10 years ago. But you can probably still play because you remember how to, and it's muscle memory.
Muscle memory,
Just
yes.
like walking is muscle memory, just like how you do things, is muscle memory.
Absolutely.
Writing is muscle memory.
Yeah.
Once you do it and once you keep practicing at it, you just get better and better and better. But, and I always say this, learn the rules, break every one of them. But you
Yes.
got to know the rules first.
Thank you. Absolutely. So I know we were supposed to get going, but on a final thought, because of what we're talking about. So when I was in grad school, I had to teach, part of our program was teaching freshman composition. And my job, the sole purpose of teaching freshman composition was to get the students used to taking a timed test, 75 minutes. Cal State system, that's everyone, didn't matter what your degree was, what your major was, everybody who goes through a Cal State school has to take a timed 75-minute test. Basically, can you write an essay in 75 minutes? Can you write
Ooh.
something coherent in 75 minutes? That's it. And so my job for 10 weeks was to drill and pound into them timed tests. So they would come in and I'm like, today, 5 minutes, right.
Mhm.
What? That's right. You're stressed out. I'm freaking you out because in 75 minutes at the end of the course, so at the end of your 4 years of studies, you will be able to pass the 75-minute test. My
Yeah.
job is to prep you for it. That's literally what I'm here for. So every day, just know you're going to write and I'm going to time you and you're going to freak out every time. But
Yep.
at the end of the 10 weeks, I would say 30 minutes time test and everybody papers out, pen, and they're like, topic.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they were ready for it. And I was like, my job is done. I've prepped them. That's my job. My job is to prep them.
Oh, absolutely.
That's
See, but
it.
see, that is awesome. And one of the things that, like, there are two things that I did in writing, and actually, when I teach writing now, or when I mentor, I actually use one of them still. But the first one is when I joined that writing group years and years ago. We're talking like 2003, 2004, somewhere in there. There were these forums where there were challenges, writing challenges, and you could only click on the topic when you were going to write because it showed if you clicked on the topic. And then you had 1 hour and less than 1,000 words to write on that topic, and there were big competitions. And the first, I don't know, 10 or 12 times that it was horrible, But then I started figuring out, and then I started becoming really good at writing under 1,000 words, a complete under 1,000 word story in under an hour. Because from the time you clicked it until the time you posted your story in that forum, you had 1 hour. That was it. And that taught me how to write and think quickly.
Yeah.
But then I wanted to learn how to conserve words because I can be wordy. And so I started challenging myself. I came up with what I called a 7 day challenge. And each day, you start on one day and then you finish at the end of the week. The first day, you write a story under 1,000 words, not a single word over. Second day, 750. Third day, 500. Fourth day, 400. Fifth day, 300. Sixth day, 200. And the seventh day, a story in 100 words. And let me tell you something, that is challenging,
I bet. My
but it teaches
God.
you how to conserve words, and it teaches
Yeah.
you how to write sentences that are concise and to the point. So when you need to expand on a sentence, you can, because you learned how to write concisely, and now you can expand on it, and but it's just, and to me, and it all goes hand in hand with pretty much my philosophy on writing is, uh, you know what your primary colors are, right?
Yes.
Okay, you have your three primary colors of red,
Yellow.
yellow,
Blue.
and blue.
Mhm.
Well, there's no single color outside of those three can exist without at least two of those three. So red, yellow, and blue created every other color.
Yes.
So they're the primary colors. They're the basic colors. Well, in order to write a story, you have to at least know the basics.
Yeah.
And the best way to know the basics is see spot run. That's basic.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
And right. But then you start mixing colors, and you come up with the secondary colors. Then you mix more, you come up with tertiary colors. Then you start adding white and black, and you get in grays, and now
It's
you all of a sudden
intense.
you
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
depth, and all of that has to have harmony. So when you're writing these pieces, you have all these things, and if you start with the basics, see spot run. I actually call it John died today is what I use. But then you have all that. But once you've done that, writing 100 word story or a 200 word story or 500 becomes really easy, and so much fun, even though it's still challenging. but it's still so much fun.
Yeah, yeah, I love that you say that. In undergrad was where I learned about flash fiction and microflash,
Mhm.
and I had never heard those terms before. And we actually, in my horror class, my horror fiction class, we had to write horror flash, and I thought it was the coolest thing
Mhm.
ever, and I still do. Like, I love horror flash. Like, so exactly what you were saying. So again, for me, because with the SOPs, so here's what's funny. I can talk for hours. I can be very verbose in conversation, but my writing is so concise that in grad school, my professors were always asking for more. And I was like, well, I started out as a journalism major. Then I became an English major. So I'm like, less is more. I'm like,
With journalism, with journalism, you start with the triangle. You literally start
yes,
with the pyramid,
yes,
you know.
yes,
And so they teach you the most important stuff is at the very beginning, and
yeah,
then all the less important stuff. That way, when they edit it out, they
uh-huh.
take stuff from the bottom first.
You still have the meat.
Yeah.
That's what, so we called it. So for us, no fluff, no, it's like filler words. My journalism professor, he was like, "Do not give me filler words. Just give me meat." And so burgers is also in my head. So I always think like burger. Okay, now we're gonna add some cheese, and then we're gonna
Mhm.
give you tomato and all of it. So everything always is. He's literally he was like, "Just give me the meat." So for me, when I'm writing, I always just want to give you the meat. And then, like I said, then when I got to grad school, they're like, there's no fluff. And I'm like, I don't know how to fluff.
Yeah.
These are the facts. Here's the story. You wanted a research paper. Here it is. You know, like 50 page research paper. I'm like, but I can do it in 25. No,
Because there's no fluff.
50. Like, so yeah.
Yeah. Because
But
there's no fluff. Right. I get it. I get it.
so
I write our manuals. It's part of our manuals at work, and almost all of it is bullet point.
yes.
And as a fictional writer, that drives me nuts. And I'm like, I can't put details. It has to be freaking bullet point. And I hate it when they say, "Can you write this part of the procedure manual?" No, no, I can't. No, no. You're going to mess up my writing ability. But but
Okay.
yeah, I get it.
So this is my final note before we sign off because
Okay.
we have so much content on here, which is awesome. So this is like a bonus, bonus, bonus. So welcome to season 5, everybody. We
Welcome to
got
season five.
writing nuggets for you. So SOPs. I did the SOPs and then we would do a training video for the SOP. And the marketing team that I worked with that did the videos, they're like, hey, can you write the script for this so that, we can do a voiceover or somebody can, act along and do these things. And I'm like, no, uh-uh. You know why? Because I gave you the bare facts. All you need to know is this. You do this, 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 and voila, you have a product.
Yep.
Do not make me do a script. I cannot write a script. It is not,
Right.
and they asked me for like 5 years. I'm not lying, AJ. Five every time. Hey, can you do a script for the video that we just recorded? No. Find someone else. You guys are marketing. I'm not the marketing department. Your
Right.
job is the fluff. My jobs are the fact. So
That's
yeah.
right. That's
I,
great. That is awesome.
So that's why this little story here. Here's my horror. I'm not going to show you what it is, but I have it right here in front of me. These are my notes. This is the hardest thing I've ever done, ever. Fiction
I,
writing.
I oh I understand. And here, but I will say this: it gets easier.
I'm
It
hoping.
gets it gets easier. Trust me, it gets easier. Technical writing, not so much, but yes, it gets easier.
Yes. So, AJ, we have given the listeners a lot of fun stories, information, and food, which of course always makes
Yes,
me happy.
yes,
So on coffee, of course. Uh,
coffee.
yes. So on that final note, I want to say thank you for being an amazing guest, starting off season 5 and sharing all of your wonderful stories. Where can the listeners find more about you on the interwebs and the socials?
Okay, on Facebook, you can find me at obviously Facebook, AJ Brown, or my real name is Jeff Brown. So you can always find me there. But typeajnegative.com is my website, and that's where all of my publications are listed. My where I put my thoughts and things like that. I do have an Instagram, I just don't use it. TikTok, I am very old school, so I have a hard time putting myself on a video trying to take selfies and stuff but type AJ negative is where you can find most of my stuff and obviously on Facebook you can AJ Brown or under uh, my name Jeff Brown as far as the uh, outside of the writer world is concerned. And I have a lot of my writer friends on my regular personal page as well.
Awesome. And I'll put those links on there. And then your coffee blog. That is, yes,
Getting
please.
Caffeinated, that's called the Getting Caffeinated Tour. And it is on WordPress. So it's WordPress.org. Because if you don't have the domain name purchased, they tend to not give you um, the .com, but yeah, it's Getting Caffeinated Coffee Tour.
Yes.
Um, God, it's so much fun doing that. So
Yes.
much fun.
Sorry. I thoroughly enjoyed reading your blogs. So I'm looking forward to you guys going and hanging out and doing more of your caffeinated tour. So thank you for that. So you know what's next.
I do. First of all, I'm going to say thank you for having me. This has been a lot of fun, and I appreciate you having me on. And it's such a you're a very good interviewer, but we have to do this, and I'm excited about this because I've been thinking about this for like weeks. So I get to say something that I don't get to say very often. Go forth and be magical.